Users of Reddit, what is the most disturbing fact you know about serial killers? When serial killer Otis Toole abducted young Adam Walsh from a store and later killed him, a later investigation showed that freaking Jeffrey Dahmer was in the same store that day. Jesus, poor kid, his death card was pulled that day and either one may have gotten him. William Suff killed 12+ women. While on parole, different crime, he worked for the county and delivered furniture. He would deliver desks to the police station, see notes on his killing spree, and then change things. Police had started to narrow suspects based on shoe prints and partial tire tracks. He then delivered a chair, saw the dry erase board, and would change his shoes and tires after each kill. When he was arrested after a random stop, they kept him because they realized his van could fit all the possible tires. The detective sat in the killer's dining room and starts to put things together chillingly. A lamp uses the same type of bulb as the one found inserted into a victim. He has a cat that matches the hair found on a victim. In the corner there's a pile of shoes that match all the different tracks. In the yard there's a pile of tires matching all these murders. That some serial killers have been known to return to crime scenes to relive their acts, sometimes even posing for photographs with their victims' bodies to capture their achievements. Ted Bundy did this. He also told the police that the Green River Killer would be doing the same thing, which he did. Gary Ridgway was almost caught once when he went back to where he had dumped a corpse before, and police saw him walking out of some bushes and asked him what he was doing. He told them he was just taking a piss, and they believed him and let him go, and they never checked. The body was found sometime later. Pedro Lopez, who was convicted of 110 murders but claimed to have committed 300, was released from prison in 1998 having served only 18 years. He hasn't been seen since. Here's hoping someone quietly waylaid him and that he's not back to his old tricks. He was wanted by Interpol in 2002 in connection with a crime that fit his MO, but they never found him and they gave up a few years later. The BTK killer kills an entire family except the daughter. Walks her down to the basement where he asks her, "Are you ready to go see mommy and daddy?" Then hangs her. She was 11. The rest of the details I don't want to type out, but Jesus, this sticks in my head when someone brings up serial killers. A fact I really enjoy about BTK is why he eventually was caught. He liked to taunt the police with letters and evidence, so he basically asked the cops, "Hey, will you guys be able to trace me if I send a floppy disk?" And the cops were like, "Nah." So he sent the disk and they traced him and caught him. BTK is the most terrifying to me. He was just a guy. Kept his shit together, for the most part. Only because he was a boomer who didn't understand computers did he get caught. Jeffrey Dahmer used a drill to drill into a guy's head and then put acid in the hole. This caused the guy to be very confused and disoriented, appearing almost drunk. The guy escaped Dahmer's apartment while he was out and was stumbling down the street naked and confused. Cops came and were asking him questions. On Dahmer's way home he saw the guy with the cops and went and convinced the cops that this was his gay lover and that he was really upset and very drunk, and the cops let Dahmer take him back home. That guy was actually a 14-year-old boy. His name was Conarake Synthesymphone. A group of women tried to argue with the police, insisting that something was clearly wrong, pointing out the fresh blood on his body, and said that the child needed to go to a hospital, not back to the place where he had very obviously just been injured. The police told the women to mind their own business, and sent the distressed Conarake Synthesymphone off with Dahmer. They let a man in his 30s take a 14-year-old child home with him explicitly to be his lover, despite the state of the boy, the age gap, the illegality of it, the weak protests and cries for help from the child himself, and the telling smell from Dahmer's apartment. They very briefly checked it but ignored the stench of Dahmer's previous victim rotting away. The boy was then murdered. The police officers sent Conarake Synthesymphone directly to his death. There are an estimated 25 to 50 active serial killers in the United States. There are most likely even more that will never leave any trace that they were active. How are they so good at hiding it? Going for people they have zero connection to? You would think it'd be hard to get away with one murder. It's actually relatively easy to get away with murder unless you kill someone in broad daylight, your boss, lover, spouse, or family. Something like only 40% of murders in major cities actually get solved. Fred West regularly graped some of his daughters and said that it is a father's job to break in his daughter. His wife Rosemary sold her body from their home, and one of her most regular clients was her own father, and Fred used to watch them through a peephole in the wall. He also murdered several of his own children in a pit in his basement and buried them around the garden in the backyard. His son wrote a book, and in it he remembers being made to help his father dig a swimming pool in the back garden. When he got home from school the next day, he found the hole filled in with concrete. It was later that he realized Fred had made him help dig a grave for his sister. One of my childhood friend's mother basically gave him to a serial killer after her husband was killed in a bar fight. He moved away in about 5th grade and we didn't see him much for a couple years. Every now and then he would visit his mom in the neighborhood. He always seemed sad. We learned later that he was essentially used as bait to attract other kids who were then killed. After the killer was caught for choosing a victim who was a classmate of my friend went away into the system and I never saw him again. It was never clear whether he knew what was going on. I wonder what he is like today. Legal system, or psychiatric institutions? How old were they? I can't imagine being given away like that, then being forced to lure my peers into death. We were about 10 when his dad died. His mom hooked him up with a big brother she met at work, and eventually just let him go with the big brother who lived a few blocks away. Suddenly my friend had expensive bikes and skateboards and trips. A couple months later they moved. The first victim, 4 years old, disappeared a few months later. The killer eventually made an admission to police 4 years later when he and my friend were brought in to be questioned in relation to the disappearance of my friend's classmate, who was supposed to be going on a trip to Disneyland with them the next day. The victims ranged from 4 to 13 years old. Arthur Gary Bishop? Yep, I met him several times. Art is what we called him. Based on the evidence, he probably molested some of my other classmates and friends. My saving grace was probably that I was a tomboy who liked bikes and baseball and hanging out with the boys. More the terrifying story of police incompetence rather than serial killers themselves. Jeffrey Dahmer kept body parts from his victims in jars in the fridge and around his apartment. His neighbor called the police on him multiple times because of the smell and the fact she saw men enter his apartment and never leave, but she was black and he was white, so no one took her seriously. He could have been stopped multiple times if police had bothered to actually go into his apartment and search. Ted Bundy was pulled over by highway patrol while there was an active warrant for his arrest. But he didn't lead the police on a high-speed chase. He pulled over, was polite, and showed them his ID. He was let go. Also, Bundy was held in Utah, but officers let him go into a room alone and he climbed out the window and escaped. He would go on to murder a bunch of college co-eds in Florida because of this. They love their families and people around them have a positive opinion of them. He was kind to those around him, or, I never would have imagined he was that kind of man. Things like that. John Wayne Gacy viewed the young men he killed as property. His thought was, since he paid for their company, they were his to do with as he pleased. Like if he had bought a toaster or a set of plates. If he wanted to destroy what he purchased, that was his right as the buyer. The toy box killer, David Parker Ray, had numerous friends and acquaintances, men and women, come over to help him abuse his captives. None of them has ever been identified. Side note. I worked with a guy whose sister had a close call with Ted Bundy. This was around the mid-70s. She was in college, walking, and he pulled up in his car and offered her a ride. He said she almost got in, but her instincts told her not to. She later recognized him after he was arrested. Dahmer was caught by accident. The cop that found the head in fridge had a history of raiding people's fridges, and eating their food while interacting with them. Yes and no. The cop who found out what he was doing went snooping in his dresser drawer and found all the Polaroids of his previous victims. Dahmer saw this and tried to book it out of the apartment, but the other cop tackled him to the ground. The stretch of Interstate 80 through northern Nevada is thought to be the hunting ground of multiple serial killers. Hitchhiking through the area is generally considered foolish in the extreme, with the number of missing people going up seemingly by the day. Driving through the area is also dangerous, with abandoned cars being routinely found both broken down and stopped to presumably help someone who was. My wife and I did a road trip that involved driving that stretch of highway. As soon as we got out of California, I took the AR handgun out of its locked case and the ammo out of the other case and loaded the gun. Basically every highway sign through that stretch had a bunch of bullet holes. From what I've learned about female killers through some media, poison and drowning seems to be a preferred method of killing. Oh. And smothering. There's actually some debate around who has the highest victim count because of a few female serial killers that used poison. Many of them operated for years and worked in the medical/care field, so it's extremely difficult to trace. Many of them were only caught because they got bored and started leaving hints for the police, sending letters to newspapers, or stopped hiding the bodies. Some, like Edmund Kemper, gave themselves in. If a serial killer doesn't want to be known, the police may not even realize that they're dealing with a serial killer and not just a bunch of unconnected cold cases. Kemper's story was insane. On April 20, 1973, Kemper was awakened by his mother, Clarnell Strandberg, coming home from a party. While sitting in her bed reading a book, she noticed Kemper enter her room and said to him, "I suppose you're going to want to sit up all night and talk now." Kemper replied, "No, good night." He waited for her to fall asleep, then he snuck back into her room to bludgeon her with a claw hammer and slit her throat with a penknife. Kemper then beheaded her and humiliated her corpse, as stated in a 1984 interview. Kemper stated that he put her head on a shelf and screamed at it for an hour, threw darts at it and, ultimately, smashed her face in. He also cut out her tongue and larynx and put them in the garbage disposal. However, the garbage disposal could not break down the tough vocal cords and ejected the tissue back into the sink. That seemed appropriate, as much as she'd and screamed and yelled at me over so many years, Kemper later said. Almost all of them have a history of animal abuse. Animal abuse is often the first sign of serious disturbance among adolescent and adult killers. Murderers very often start out by killing and torturing animals as kids. Homicidal triad: bedwetting, arson, animal abuse. Hamilton Howard Fish, better known as Albert Fish, ate a child. He stated that he had massacred over 100 children, and was finally arrested after murdering a young girl called Grace Butt in 1934. He was only convicted of 10 murders but, as mentioned above, likely killed more. I'm actually related to a serial killer on my mother's side. The history of that side of the family as a whole is complicated, to put it lightly. Hey, great uncle for me. He managed 6 kills before caught and hanged locally. They, didn't bother with the whole court trial or presumed innocence. This relative would have been my grandmother's first cousin. He got hooked with 3 murders, but there might have been more. He was executed just a year or 2 before my mother was born. It was always a pretty dark topic everyone avoided at family gatherings for a long time, according to my mom. Dean Corll killed teenage boys in the Houston area in the early 70s. He was known as the Candy Man because his parents owned a candy store. He recruited 2 teenagers named David Brooks and Elmer Wayne Henley to help him procure his victims. Usually they'd spot kids walking down the street, riding their bikes or hitchhiking, and lure them in with the promise of beer and weed. When they got to the house, Corll would overpower them and tie them to a torture board, and you can imagine the rest. Often, he would keep them alive for days. Death usually occurred by strangulation or a .22 gunshot to the head. On one occasion he had 2 victims, so he freed one arm each and told them whoever beats the other one to death gets to live. Then he would sit back and watch them. He was killed by Henley when he made plans to kill 2 of Henley's friends. Corll had already killed several of Henley's friends in the past, and Henley didn't want any more to die, so he shot him. Then he called the police and told them everything. Death toll was a minimum of 28 victims. John Wayne Gacy got some of his ideas from Corll. That the majority of them have had a documented brain injury as a child. Could have been minor or major, but still they tend to carry that same thing in common. Scary how wobbly little kids are, and that one knock on the edge of the coffee table could become something huge in the future. Brain injuries as adults are probably also a factor. It's documented with pro-Westers. Vern Gaunt ended up killing a fellow resident at a facility for people with dementia. Chris Benoit's brain was cottage cheese due to concussions and killed his family. New Jack had a brain injury and has had multiple murder accusations and said he wanted to kill Vic Grimes during a match. One of the most prolific serial killers was William Unek, who killed 57 people over 3 separate killing sprees. His first spree he killed 21 people with an axe in 1.5 hours. He was a police constable. No one knows why he did what he did. Luis Garavito, Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, dressed as a monk to lure young boys and had 193 proven victims. He was arrested in April 1999 on an attempted rape charge, but when an investigating judge asked him if he was the killer of 114 children whose bodies were found in 59 Colombian towns beginning in 1994, Garavito admitted the crimes and begged to be forgiven. Didn't happen. Pedro Lopez, also known as the Monster of the Andes, has at least 110 proven victims. He is linked to more than 300 in his native Colombia and Ecuador and Peru. At least 1/3 were tribal women. After Lopez's arrest in 1980, police found the graves of more than 50 preteen victims. He was later convicted of murdering 110 girls in Ecuador. He confessed to 240 more in Colombia and Peru. What is really crazy is he was released in 1998 for good behavior after 18 years. His current whereabouts are unknown, but it's presumed he kept going. Javed Iqbal confessed to the SA and murder of 100 young boys in Pakistan. Mikhail Popkov, also known as the Angarsk Maniac, Russia, was convicted of 78 counts of aggravated murder and 2 attempted. It's a global problem. Sadly, some people are really prolific for decades. Gary Ridgway picked up a victim with his very young son in the truck. They drove around a bit. Gary parked somewhere near a forest and told his son, "We'll be back in a bit." The two of them left him there in the truck. Only Gary returned. His son asked him where the lady was and he responded something to the affect of, "She had places she needed to be." The victims you don't know about or that won't be investigated, sometimes because there are too many. It has been suggested that there are currently multiple serial killers traveling the US as truck drivers, murdering people all with impunity and invisibility, some for decades. Knowing this, consider that there are plenty of places in the world where this would be highly plausible, not only in the US. Another one. Between 1993 and 2011, 500 women were murdered in Mexico, with 370 killed in Ciudad Juarez and Chihuahua alone. While the murders are attributed to cartel and various criminal activity, the idea that one could continually murder people as an ongoing activity has to suggest serial killing or at least the necessary psychopathy. In a related story, Amnesty International reported in 2020 that 10 women a day were murdered in Mexico in primarily acts of femicide. Literally killed because of their gender. I saw this documentary where serial killers discussed how they picked their victims, and one said he would just walk up to the front door and turn the doorknob. If it opened, to him it meant he was welcomed, and that's how he chose his next victim. Every chance I get, I tell people to lock their doors and not just the house. If you park your car in the driveway, please lock those doors too, and take your garage door opener/spare keys out of your cars. Sounds like Richard Chase. The butcher baker went after workers because he learned early on that the police don't care about them. He had attempted to assault a woman. She worked like an office job, and while he was out on bail for that, he assaulted a worker. He was never charged for the assault, which told him that he would be more successful sticking to women like that because obviously, the court systems don't care about them. Which was true, because he went on killing a lot of women over a span of years and wasn't caught for the longest time because no one cared that about their disappearance. That's so beyond messed up. Police don't care when workers are attacked or killed, and that shit isn't okay.